Are we on Talking Joe?
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dives, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbow. Like a buzzball or a pogo. Got ninjas like Don Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you in stereo. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
And hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all about us over at the website talkingjoe.co.uk. And if you're not following us yet already, you can do so in a number of ways. You could hit the subscribe button on the YouTubes, or you could go over to the Facebook group and join that. Now, today we will be talking about G.I. Joe issue 4, released just this week gone, 19th of February 2025. But I will not be talking about that issue on my own. As always, I will be joined by a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark. And hello, listeners and viewers.
Very good. We are once again live as we record this out on to YouTube. So hello to everyone catching us live. So if you're one of the cool kids like Checkpoint Alpha, you can send us a message as we go. So greetings to everyone watching us live, as well as those people watching and listening later on. Probably just worth for housekeeping, just noting that we do record in a various different number of ways. Quite often we'll record on video like this, then I'll edit it and I'll post it out. Sometimes we might go live, but pretty much what I will always do is edit the audio and put it out as a nice, crisp, tightly edited audio production for your audio pleasure.
Mark, what do you edit when you do these small edits and a 2-hour episode becomes an hour and 57 minutes?
Yeah, so the people now listening back as audio only episodes would have no idea what just happened, because you would just sound completely normal and flawless in your speech, Tim. So I'll have to break a rule there and leave all of your ums and ers in for that last segment, so it makes some sense. There we go, one of them. What are we doing next? Let's do some AOB before we get any other business, before we get right into issue 4 of G.I. Joe from Skybound, and let's start with a look at some.
Wait, Mark.
Reprints.
What's AOB?
Any other business.
Okay.
You should know this, Tim. You're taking the minutes for when we talk about the meetings and the actions later on.
Here's my pen.
Okay. So first up, we've got some reprints coming. So first of all, there are some third printings of G.I. Joe issue 1, and they look quite nice. So first of all, we have got a Kendrick Kunka Lim Baroness standard. Then we have got, this one's quite exciting, 2 from Doug Mahnke, who is a favorite of mine from back in the days when he was the illustrator of The Mask comic.
Mark, who colors these 2 Doug Mahnke covers? Do we know?
This the Doug Mahnke is FX Studio color.
Okay. I like the color, and Doug Mahnke is one of those artists who's been drawing comics for 30 years who, if I was going to make a long list of artists who I would love to draw GI Joe, one cover or pinup, the Energon Universe book, Larry Hama's Real American Hero. He's one of those artists who I think would be a great fit for GI Joe, and I would also think, well, he would never draw GI Joe, and so it's a really fun surprise that he's doing this Duke cover, and my fingers are crossed that there will be more, because he's one of those guys who can do it all, and he has drawn a lot of comics, a lot of different kinds of comics that you and I both like. I liked his Frankenstein for Seven Soldiers, the Grant Morrison non-event event, and
Major Bummer he did as well. After Mask and all sorts. And he was like an early pioneer of that kind of Ryan Otley, invincible, over-the-top violence and blood and stuff like that. And so it's quite suitable that they've got a cover C, this is, I think, which is a battle damage variant of Duke, sort of covered in covered in damage, as is the corridor and the floor and the lights and everything around him.
Makes me wonder if Mankey draws on Bristol with ink and did a photocopy and like a re-ink with a lot of corrections, or draws partially or all digitally, such that it was much easier to change those elements.
He is very comfortable in the digital space. He'd sort of, on his Instagram, he plays with even doing like little cartoons of his art and things like that. So it could well be that this is digital only. Yeah, Doug Mankey in the more, most of his career has been doing loads of stuff for DC. So certainly did some of Joe Kelly's JLA. Thanks, Greg. And then this is cool. So there was a G.I. Joe issue 1 variant, which was the Cobra Commander mask. And then this third printing from die cut.
You're leaving out this bit where the mask itself was a sort of a second cover element that was sort of stapled on top of the sort of white cardstock element. So actually, if you pull this issue out of a box, if it's not in a bag and board, if you pull it out of a box with a lot of loose other comics and then you push it back in, it's very easy to damage. So folks, if you're rifling through your store's recent or back issues, please be careful when you get to the end of G.I. Joe #1. Oh, are you grabbing one right now? No,
I'm just grabbing Cobra Commander. I'm just sort of tempted to get out my Sharpie and just
to put a red eyes and a smiley face on it. And then what would you use to make that scratch? Okay, so as Mark was saying, here there's this third printing. Is this Andrea Milano?
This is Andrea Milano, yes.
Okay,
so this is Cobra Commander artist.
So to match Cobra Commander's altered look from the Cobra Commander miniseries with the blood, scary smiley face and the torch burn mark across it, it's a sort of a revision of that variant die-cut foil edition of G.I. Joe #1. I think that was cover HIJKLMNOP. This one will also be $1 more so this is not a $4.99 cover. This is a $5.99 cover because there's so much extra hardware going into it.
I see. And all of these covers will actually. Do I have more? Yes, I do have more. Then there is also second printings of G.I. Joe issue 2, which is coming with the standard second printing variants from Jason Howard, who has been doing the second printing with a character spotlight for most of the Energon universe, if not all. So there is a Destro, which is the second Destro from Jason Howard, this time with his sort of shoulder armor in that updated G.I. Joe by Tom Reilly design, and then also Cover Girl. So these will all, I believe, be in stores 5th of March. So if you want them from your store, I'll move on.
These Jason Howard covers, no background, just white with either the Cobra or G.I. Joe symbol behind them.
Mhm.
So matching, as Mark said, matching that trade dress of all of these Jason Howard Energon Universe second prints. Hey, I see Frank Cho. What's this?
So last time when we were covering issue 3, there were a couple of covers that we hadn't yet seen that were relating to issue 3. So this one is the Frank Cho issue 3 exclusive that was being sold at MegaCon. And I think you can also find it in other places out there on the internet. So a cool image there from Frank Cho. We talked before about his Hail Cobra print that he had previously done.
Let's go back a second. Let's just describe this in a sentence for people who are listening, not watching. This is Baroness in her G.I. Joe costume with a long sniper rifle standing in front of a shot up gray concrete wall, and on it is a poster with the Cobra insignia, and it says "Join or Die." "Join or Die" is a reference to, was it Benjamin Franklin who did that woodcut of a snake divided into pieces back in 1770 something, and each piece of the snake had a letter or two next to it signifying one of the pre-American colonies, and the idea was the colonies had to unite, otherwise the revolution wasn't going to work. And,
okay, very good.
Mark is holding it up to his phone. Yes. Okay, so that's the Frank Cho cover.
Mm-hmm. And then there was also a Rose Beche Virgin variant, again a MegaCon exclusive. So this one is the Baroness in her Joe costume in either a grisly fairground candy floss accident or a giant fur coat.
This is another variant for 3 that we hadn't seen yet a month ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. For Americans, candy floss is cotton candy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And torch is flashlight.
That's right.
Okay.
So then we've got even more. So there was a sort of a reveal of the next G.I. Joe trade paperback, which features Beachhead, Lady J, Flint on the front cover.
Wait, the bigger news is that it reveals the artist and the colorist and the subtitle of the second story arc.
Yeah, it's building up to that.
Sorry,
so Volume 2, subtitle, Blood's Revenge. So very exciting. We get an idea of what the second arc might be all about. So that's likely to be covering so an arc in these Energon universe looks to be about six issues. So this will be covering 7 through to 12. And the interesting reveal is what they're calling guest artist Andrea Milana with colorist Lee Lowridge. So Andrea Milana was the artist on the Cobra Commander series, and Lee Lowridge was the colorist on the Scarlet miniseries. And so we will be looking at those covers in some detail when we cover issue as they come out. But we did get a reveal of G.I. Joe issue 7 covers with Beachhead very much in the spotlight. And obviously they're making quite a big play for this beginning of this second arc. So with some interesting covers. And if you're paying attention, last episode, we did reveal the Tom Reilly design of Beachhead in that episode on screen. Now, in the solicits for that issue 7, they let loose some interesting tidbits as well. So spoiler hats on if you don't want to know anything about the next arc.
I'm taking my headphones off. Give a wave when I can put them back on.
But this isn't a particularly big spoiler, but they say essentially that this is Night Force. So they had been teasing Night Force. I think now it's becoming clear that Beachhead, Flint, Lady J, that sub team will be Night Force, and we saw a GI Joe Ashcan edition with a Night Force cover. So that hint will pay off here. They say kicking off the second story arc of the New GI Joe epic. Issue 7 is a standalone Night Force covert op that features the first appearance of the iconic Beachhead. But is this really his last mission? So there we go. This exciting issue to look forward to.
Can I come back? Okay.
You can come back.
The signal, because I would like to be as surprised by issue 7 as I can be. Even though I own a store and I'm seeing catalogs for these issues before they come out, and I'm on the Skybound mailing list, and Mark and I are considered press because of this podcast, I would still like to be surprised by what happens in the issue, as if I'm just a regular old reader.
Mm-hmm. Then before we get into issue 4 proper, I just wanted to have a quick tour of what else is happening in the Skybound universe. And it's Skybound with the Talking Joe guys. Everyone calm down. We're here to talk comics. Skybound. So, G.I. Joe issue 4 is not the only thing happening in the Skybound energon universe. There are 2 other books that are occurring. So, in the world of Transformers, we had a little mini episode talking about the big reveal of Starscream as a Hiss tank combiner. That storyline has continued. So, that Hiss tank bottom half of Starscream very much playing a part.
Sorry, I have to correct you. Combiner, Transformers fans, combiner is not quite the word here. The word really is more like duocon.
Okay.
You have half of a thing and half of a thing, and they become a thing. I mean, even that's not accurate because it's a whole Hiss tank and half of Starscream. Anyway, let's talk about Void Rivals.
It's a bit like a headmaster, but also a head and torso and arms master. But beyond that interesting element of what is going on in Transformers, Void Rivals is very much part G.I. Joe in terms of the Cobra La elements of that. So back in Cobra Commander, in the conclusion of that and following the free comic book day, Pythona headed out on into space, and that story has been picked up and been running, in the pages of Void Rivals. So, starting with issue 13, this one here, a couple of pages here and there, but and building up to the most recent issue, almost very much dominating the story. So. They've been tracking the Transformers into space. Initially they find evidence of jet fire on that planet from Void Rivals issue number 1. They continue on. They encounter some sort of green rock which begins to mutate some of the party, so some of the Royal Guard, and they're becoming these sort of mutated, more individualistic characters. And then they bump into this ship, a ship piloted by none other than Skuxoid. And this latest issue, issue 16, as I say, very much dominated as a confrontation between Skuxoid and Pythona and her crew.
If you like G.I. Joe the movie, the animated movie, Pythona has been on 2 covers of Void Rivals in the last couple of months. One of which is she's front and center. The cover is about her. The other is her attacking Skuxoid. And Void Rivals is a fun, good sci-fi comic. So it gets my recommendation.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun with even before this this Pythona subplot, and yeah, if you enjoyed seeing Cobra La in the pages of Cobra Commander, you want to see how that story plays out. It's pretty much essential reading at the moment. So,
and of course, in 6 months or a year, there's going to be some kind of crossover or event. So why not get in on the 3rd floor now that the series has been running for over a year? You can't get on the ground floor. Why not get in on the 3rd floor and see these G.I. Joe adjacent developments as they happen?
Excellent. So let's get actually into G.I. Joe issue 4, brought to us from the creative team of writer Joshua Williamson, artist Tom Reilly, colorist Jordie Bellaire, letterer Russ Wooton, editor Ben Abernethy, logo and production design Andres Juarez, and production Ashby Florence. Now, let's have a look at the things what sit on the front of them their comics.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Mark, you've been doing such a nice job updating some of our video logos. Should we do some new images for the cover gallery?
We could, couldn't
so
we?
we're not showing yojo.com close-ups of 26 and 27 from Marvel. Okay. G.I. Joe issue number 4 of the Energon universe, cover A, is drawn and colored by Tom Reilly. This cover is divided somewhat in half. The bottom third is several bat fists pumping in the air. Behind them is a giant platform, a big solid black platform with the Cobra logo on it. So then taking up the top 2/3 of the cover is a Stinger. Driving it is Ripper. Atop it is Cobra Commander in his Napoleon Cobra uniform with a sword held aloft and a giant red flag. And then the top third of the cover is the logo and a lightning bolt striking behind Cobra Commander and all this. This is one of those covers that it is not a scene that literally takes place in the issue, and it doesn't even correspond to a scene that takes place in the issue. We don't see bats in the issue. Cobra Commander isn't on the Stinger. Cobra Commander isn't in the scene with the Stinger. That's okay, because this cover still very much represents what happens in the issue, a victory for Cobra and this character and this vehicle. Tom Reilly does another really wonderful job of honing in a striking arrangement of elements and also a limited color palette, right? There's 1 or 2 reds, there's 2 or 3 or 4 blues, but they really feel like kind of one blue. There is a little bit of gray. This is not Tom Reilly. This is designer Andres Juarez. The logo is a mustard yellow, which picks up from the sort of wrists of the bats. What's also funny, if you think about this cover, this would have to be outside because lightning can't be inside. But my brain sort of sees this scene as happening in like a hangar or in a Cobra base, because it's sort of like a car show, like, bats, look at our new vehicle, the Stinger. But lightning does not strike inside. Very cool cover, pops really nicely from the shelf, and also is nicely different than the previous month's cover. Cover B.
Yeah, it's sort of echoing the interior page, the one where Cobra Commander is sort of stood inside, lit by overhead lighting, I guess, on top of a hiss rather than on top of a Stinger. And he's rallying and sort of getting his robots, very roused, Cobra, you're the best. Yes, I am, aren't I?
This is keep this image on screen for a moment, if you would. A friend of mine draws comics professionally and did a cover for one of the big publishers, and a very good colorist colored the cover. And my friend said, I like these colors, but they're not really cover colors. They're sort of interior colors. And I didn't really know what he meant. And I don't still fully know what he means. But looking at this cover, Tom Reilly's drawing and color for G.I. Joe 4, I can say these colors really pop, and these are cover colors. But now for that comparison, Mark, can you go back to that image you just showed, that 2-page scene from inside the issue where Cobra Commander is on the HISS tank, which does somewhat correspond to this scene. And I love Jordie Bellaire's colors. These colors, I would argue, are not cover colors. And the cover, Tom Reilly's drawing with Cobra Commander on the stinger and the bat fists, wouldn't be as exciting, wouldn't jump out as much if this sort of washed out palette were the cover colors. Okay, cover B. Drawn by David Finch and colored by Adriano Lucas. This is 3 Joes on motorcycles. These are these vamps, these slightly updated vamps that remind me sort of from
Rams.
Rams, rapid assault motorcycles. Excuse me. I know G.I. Joe. I know G.I. Joe 1982. How dare I?
After the fact, I did go, because we talked about this last episode, I did do a sort of side-by-side comparison of the new updated classified RAM versus the designs shown in the comics, and they are definitely the same design.
Okay. I'm just going to pretend that Tom Reilly has one of these on his desk and gets to look at it and draw it from reference. Oh, hey, there's the original art. That's cool. So Duke and Baroness and Risk, way in the background, are driving on these motorcycles. Each has a pistol. They're driving at us. So there's this zooming triangular, 1-point perspective with the vanishing point behind Risk down near the bottom of the cover. Lots of exciting explosion speed lines as they drive away from, fiery death. Very exciting cover. Does correspond to a scene, to a moment from the cover, from the interior. And yet I do prefer cover A to this one, but I am a sucker for a Tom Reilly drawing of someone standing on a Jeep. Cover C. Cover C, G.I. Joe still has open to order, not ratio, not rare C covers as of issue 4. This is Chameleon. It's drawn and colored digitally by Derek Chu. We were looking up slightly at Chameleon. The camera is sort of at thigh height, and the camera is tilted up a little bit at her. She's got her hand up, not as if she's saluting, but as if she's sort of adjusting her goggles. There's a sunset behind her. She's in a city with some tall buildings. Let's say New York. And I think she's walking sort of down the street, but we're close enough to her, and the background is out of focus enough that you don't really know what city it is, and there's no sense of other people or parked cars. So this doesn't feel like a battle scene. It just feels like a cool location. And viewer, listener, can you put that one back up, Mark?
That's Sam.
Sam Myers says, Chameleon is growing on me as a character. Me too.
And whenever I see Chameleon on a big image like this on the cover, I always have to point out, she's got that mole, just like the Baroness. They're still drawing it.
Every time I see Chameleon getting a cover all by herself like this, I wonder when there will start to be not a backlash, but a light reaction amongst a handful of Joe fans on the internet who say, as they do with, oh, look, another Baroness cover, I'm shocked. Or look, another Baroness variant cover of, her just kind of standing there, or her being a little sexy. I wonder if in a few months we'll have some Chameleon fatigue of her just standing there, and people will say, oh, look, a Chameleon cover. Yeah,
and I'm going to have to do a jingle. Come, Chameleon. She's on a cover again.
It's 1 in 10. This one is not 1 in 10. Speaking of 1 in 10, Cover D is the David Nakayama 1:10 ratio variants. This has 2 Cobra Valkyries. These are the female Cobra infantry soldiers in blue. One of them has it was like different heads on the 2-pack, right? For the action figures, like a regular head and then a head that has a gas mask. It's not a secondary piece that you take on or off. I'm just going to assume it's a different head. Behind them is the HasLab his tank, right? Because it's got the added sort of bits and details. This cover connects with the previous covers for issue 1, 2, and 3 to make a 4-part horizontal tableau. These 2 characters are facing a little bit to the left, so they are firing past Chameleon, who we saw in the covered issue 3, at CoverGirl, who we saw on the covered issue 2, and Baroness, who was ignoring it all to look at us happy on the covered issue 1. I like this cover. It has a slight Dutch angle. Notice the verticals of the buildings in the background. They're not straight up and down. They're a little bit diagonal. So are these 2 women. So what that really is saying is that the camera is tilted here. The tripod, one of the 3 legs of the camera tripod for the quote photo quote taken of this scene as it really happened is shorter than the others. I like this cover, and it's a nice sort of course correction after the less successful Chameleon 1:10 that we talked about in a previous episode. Cover E is drawn by Travis Moore and colored by Adriano Lucas. Here is Risk standing with the Hector Garrido toy package painted explosion style explosion behind him. He's got his shotgun over one shoulder and his wrist gauntlet weapon hand thing on his other hand. It's not activated, so it's not crackling with electrical blue energy. I forgot that he's got steel-toed loafers. Good for running. I feel like if this character in 10 years stars in an episode of some future G.I. Joe, show, or gets a scene in some future movie, like this cover will be the overlooked G.I. Joe cover of 2025. And then cover F is the 1:50 variant. This is drawn and colored by E.J. Sue, who just, speaking of other Skybound news, just got announced as the artist for an upcoming Skybound monthly that is not the Energon universe, but maybe, this is actually a guess, maybe it's related to Battle Beast and Invincible. I don't know. I only skimmed the email. This is the sort of continuing style of E.J. Sue blueprint covers, where there's a vehicle drawn at an isometric angle, and then behind it is a blueprint of it from front and side and top. And 2 things strike me about this really, really elegant, that's not the word, this really, really sharp take on the Cobra Fang helicopter. One, this is the 1980s Fang, right? This is not the
this is slightly, a classic, yeah.
This is not the slightly changed one from like 2 years ago. And also, this is not a fantasy vehicle that a real person could get into. This is the toy. E.J. Sue, I don't think I realized this for his previous blueprint covers. E.J. Sue is really drawing the toy. And what sort of says that to me is the peg in the seat, which is what secures an action figure there. Now, I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm saying this with a big smile on my face. This feels more of an homage to the Wayne Luther Hasbro toy vehicle blueprints that came with G.I. Joe toys in the 80s than I had even thought. Because again, this isn't like the vehicle that could be in a scene in this comic that a fantasy character gets into. This is the thing that I had. I still have mine. This is the thing that I had in my hand as a kid. This is a thing that's in a box, somewhere in another room. And Mark, are there any retailer variants for G.I. Joe issue 4?
There is this one from Tyler Kirkham, which is a Cobra Commander. in his, as you say, Napoleonic folded kind of lapel look, in the Tyler Kirkham style, looking quite muscular. He's holding a rod. Would you call it a rod? A staff with a cobra sigil on the top, and against a very plain blue background.
Mark, didn't Tyler Kirkham draw the IDW New Avengers Transformers 4-issue miniseries crossover that came out in like 2007? I think he did. I'm going to make a little comment on this one. Mark said, looking very muscular. I'm going to change a word from my point of view, and I'm going to say too muscular. I don't think I mind Cobra Commander being muscular, but it becomes conspicuous when he's like too muscular for his clothing, and this becomes a superhero cover. This becomes a superhero character. This is a superhero drawing of. I know he's a weird Cobra Law alien, human, whatever, but I think he should have the proportions of a human, not a super
He-Man toy. Yeah. Okay, let's get on into the insides of this issue and find out what happens in a
breakdown.
Duke, Risk, and the Baroness, with Dr. Venom in tow, are pursued by the Crimson Twins. They launch a precise missile strike from the Stinger, which targets the Rams, blowing them up but leaving the Joes themselves unscathed. Surrounded by Crimson Guardsmen and not willing to risk civilian collateral damage, Duke surrenders. Elsewhere, at a secret bunker, as Stalker and Covergirl arrive to support the transportation of the brainwave scanner, they are attacked by Chameleon and Ripper. Meanwhile, at Springfield, Mercer and Destro recover the body of the Cobra spy, a blue-skinned, body-wearing flesh suit, and while they do so, they are spied on by Clutch. They are interrupted by an order from Cobra Commander that all of Cobra reconvene at the Mars Industries building in Washington, D.C. Cobra Commander unveils his grand scheme to combine the brainwave scanner with energon to create a brainwave bomb, which will make anyone caught in the blast radius obey Cobra. And for a trial run, Cobra conveniently has a group of test subjects ready, the captured G.I. Joe team. There you go, Tim. What do you think?
I have a top-down reaction. I had been thinking a lighter version of this for the last few months with Josh Williamson's take on G.I. Joe. You know, it's got lasers and there's Cobra Law and there's, you know, a lot of fast action. And I'd been thinking, and he has said, I think in the letters page, you know, I'm taking some cues from the animated series. And it sort of came all the way together for me when you turn that page and Cobra Commander says, brainwave bomb. I'm going to combine these two things and make a brainwave bomb. And I thought, you know, as sort of fantastical and sci-fi as the Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic gets and has gotten, this just feels like the Sunbow cartoon. You know, I'm thinking of Cobra plots from the Sunbow cartoon, like Primordial Plots, where Cobra clones dinosaurs, or shoot, what's the one with the giant vegetables? Greenhouse Effect, where and it starts at a county fair, and Cobra holds Chicago hostage with literally like giant vegetables. But it sounds dumb. It's awesome. But it's I thought, oh, this comic feels like Joshua Williamson is writing the sort of 5-part animated miniseries that introduces G.I. Joe as if that is happening in 2025. And it's not the 1982 toy line, that's getting promoted. It's the classified toy line that's getting promoted. And Clutch going undercover, Duke giving up in sort of a end of issue surprise. These feel like the kind of plot turns that happen in Sunbow episodes, whether it's self-contained half hours or those early miniseries. And as a big fan of the Sunbow cartoon, I'm saying this as an observation and a compliment. I have no problem with this. And again, it's one more thing that keeps the other Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic so distinct from this one. I think also I'm slightly absorbing a cue from Tom Reilly's art, which doesn't necessarily look like the G.I. Joe cartoon of the 80s, but looks more like it than many other artists who have drawn comics. But something about sort of how like pulpy and fast it is.
It's also that element of splitting the teams as well. That feels very much like the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
From the Cobra side, half of the team is going to go and capture Dr. Monev, and the other half is going to go after the brainwave scanner, bring them back and bring the things together. And then with the captured Joes, we can do this thing.
Right. At the end of both. Sam says, agree, Tim. Duke getting captured even on purpose is very Sunbow. And at both midway or at the end of both the original 83 miniseries and the 84 miniseries, Mass Device and Weather Dominator, in both cases, Cobra Commander and Destro have a falling out, and Destro takes over briefly. And that doesn't happen here, but this scene where Destro says, how dare you not keep me in the loop? Cobra Commander says, well, I had to do a thing. And Destro says, right, so you sold me out to do it. That feels like that moment in episode like 4 and episode like 8 or 9 of the original G.I. Joe, where, Cobra Commander says, Destro. And then Destro says, no, I'm in control now. And again, because this is still very new, like this feeling I had watching those episodes when I was a kid, all I knew of these characters was what was in the show so far. 3 episodes into G.I. Joe, all I know is 3 episodes worth of G.I. Joe. And, 24 and a half comic books into this new G.I. Joe continuity, even though all these characters are very much based on the toy packaging dossiers, as they have said several times in the letters page, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Joshua Williamson might have even said it in our interview with him. Check it out. I keep going back to a starting point, which is how they're portrayed on the backs of the toy packaging. Because this G.I. Joe feels very new, this team just got together. It feels like, whereas the Larry Hama comic, every time something happens, even if Hama's not worried about other times that something similar or opposite happened, but as a reader, it's sort of reminding you, it's like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow have a tense agreement or falling out. And you think, oh, well, that echoes with 50 issues ago and 100 issues ago when that happened. Whereas here, this is all for the first time. And so the freshness that I felt when the Duke miniseries was starting and the freshness that I felt just 3 months ago when issue 1 came out, 4 issues into the new series, I'm still feeling that because the characters don't all know each other and I don't know them all. So my top down is like the cartoon, awesome, and still feels very new.
With that pause point, I was just going to share the super chat from Infinite Entertainment. Thank you so much. He says, hey, I'm here live for once, slowly making my way through the Joe comics, and your backlog is keeping me entertained at work. Thanks for all of the content. Yes, over 300 episodes. Been at it 6 years. Thanks for enjoying, and I think this is, well, I know that this is the first super chat that we have ever received. So thank you very much for doing that. That's very cool.
What's your Mark? What's your top down take on G.I. Joe issue 4?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of the story, and you see it kind of on page one. It literally, you're picking up. It's the second page in the trade following the last page. Almost it's definitely one of those ones that is hot on the heels of the previous issue. And what I am one of the themes that I was picking up on from this issue and the previous is that the Joes are very much on the back foot. They keep on losing essentially. So Duke kind of had his moment of victory at the end of the Duke miniseries, but even then he was kind of victorious over the wrong people. He was on a mission of revenge against Starscream and ended up beating up a bat. So he felt kind of a moment of triumph, but it was kind of against the wrong enemy. And then they've sort of had a mission against the entirety of the Transformers. But yeah, we've seen them shot, killed, out of their depth, injured, recuperating against each other's necks, blown up again, and now all finally captured, and you kind of get the sense of what a small team it is as well. Still, that it's they've split the team into two. Sort of Stalker picks up on this at one point. We shouldn't have split up the team because they're essentially, because Rock and Roll's dead, Clutch is missing. They're left with essentially a team of five, of whom
two and three.
Two were injured, and so when the cover girl and with her horrific burns, and then Stalker go off on their submission. Stalker's in a bad way, not because he's caught a bullet, but because his stitches have popped open because he's not yet recuperated. And we're sort of dealing with comic book time, which works a little bit like sort of TV series time as well. Like if you're watching an episode of 24, Jack Bauer might have died the previous issue and then been resuscitated and been tortured and all the rest of it, but he's back up and running the next episode, because in the series it's all real time, but in TV Imagination Land, a week has passed and he's had a bit of time to recuperate. So I feel you've got a bit of that happening in the comic, that you've got Stalker and Covergirl out of their hospital beds, but still very much in a bad way. But so the remaining team, it's just the three of them. So when they're caught and the other two are caught, that's the entirety of the G.I. Joe team taken down.
Yeah. I wasn't there for issue 1 of Marvel's G.I. Joe when the team is only 13. And so that feeling that it's small, and I would argue that 13 isn't small, but that feeling that it's small, or that feeling around issue 12 or 13 when some new characters introduced and now the team is bigger, and then a year later it happens again. I wasn't there for that. I got to the comic and the team was already big. And I like how focused this is, and I hope that the creatives can keep that for a really long time. But I know that, according to the cover of Trade Paperback Volume 2, plus the tiny story in the Energon Universe special, Lady J and Flint and Beachhead are coming, and if you take one character out, if Rock and Roll leaves and you bring in 3 new characters, they're not adding pages to the comic, so the pie's not getting any bigger. They're just slicing the pie into smaller pieces. And if you add 1 new character, you probably don't notice that all the slices are like 6% smaller. If you add 3 characters, right? But maybe in the second arc, that other team is some kind of adversary, and Cobra sort of gets quiet for a few issues, and so the spotlight on the Joes doesn't get any smaller. But I like this point that you're making, that the team is not only very small, it's really very small, and the book feels like that. It doesn't feel like a big step up since the Duke miniseries, right? When, for an issue, Duke's by himself, but then he's got Clutch, and then he's got Rock and Roll, and then halfway through the Duke miniseries, it's a GI Joe miniseries. They just haven't called it GI Joe yet because it's him and a team. And to that moment about Stalker realizing that his stitches have been popped, I really liked that scene because he and CoverGirl just ran past a bunch of gunfire, and maybe someone was going to get shot. And I don't know that I have read enough or paid attention enough as I'm reading Joshua Williamson comics to sort of get the feel of like a Joshua Williamson scene, a Joshua Williamson signature bit or flourish. I am also reading his monthly Superman right now. Very, very fun and pretty. But this moment where Stalker, there's this reveal halfway through a page. Ugh, damn it. Stalker, you're hit. No, I just popped a stitch from the last time we dealt with these guys. Hopefully we finish this before I bleed out. Something about that vaguely is starting to remind me of other things I have read in these Joshua Williamson G.I. Joe comics. So that's fun. It's starting to feel familiar, even though it's still new and fresh. And then another thing that hangs over this in terms of how long will it feel new and different is, when is the Baroness going to defect? Because I am 83% sure she definitely will. And in the I think there's a little bit of a comparison with the Marvel Cinematic Universe here, right? Where this is a new G.I. Joe, which takes elements from previous G.I. Joes and combines them and simplifies them and refreshes them. And the Marvel Cinematic Universe took a lot of story and character beats from the 60s and 70s and 80s, and also the Ultimate Comics, the Ultimate Universe of 2000, and mushed them together and strained them. And in some of those movies, for the first, 5 or 10 years, it's a solo movie and it feels like a solo movie. And then more recently, even the solo movies are like kind of big team up movies. And Kevin Feige, who's the head of Marvel Studios, said this interesting thing years ago in some interview when talking about sort of what they aim for. And the question was something like, some of your movies have sort of leapt ahead or had a big thing happen that maybe you'd wait for the sequel, or maybe you'd wait for the third one. And he said, no, we've decided if you have a big, crazy idea, if you have a big leap, go for it. Put it in the screenplay. And if it ends up being too much, we'll take it back, right? So, things happened in Captain America 2 or Captain America 3, which in an earlier thinking about a movie franchise, you might have held until a 4th or 5th movie and then maybe never gotten around to it. It's like, we're changing the status quo too much. And so I'm looking at this G.I. Joe series, and some things are moving slowly, right? Cobra's still coalescing, right? Tom X and Zaymot have their first full appearance. And other things are moving really fast. A character dies. And Baroness is this version of herself that we haven't seen before. She's a good guy, which again only reminds me of the first live action movie, Rise of Cobra. But I am 83% sure that she's 100% defecting. And is this going to be the sort of like Joshua Williamson, we're taking this as slow as we can. We have ideas and plans for years, and it's not going to happen until issue 40 or 50. And then it starts to feel a lot more like other G.I. Joe we've known, where Baroness is a bad guy and she's in her black costume with a red symbol on her chest. Or is this, more like the Marvel movies, where it's like, no, we're just doing a different thing. And you don't know when the Winter Soldier is showing up. Second Captain America movie that had just happened in the comic books, right? For decades, you can't bring Bucky back. That's an inviolable rule. And then they did, and then the movies, they did, right? And this sort of, it's not an inviolable rule that Baroness can't be a good guy, but it keeps sort of throwing me off kilter.
Yeah. I'm there with you. I'm sort of pulled in different directions, because I think this idea of the Baroness being a goodie is an interesting idea, and I want them to kind of play with it, a little bit longer. But I'm also getting this, and I think they probably toying with that idea too. But I'm also getting this sense that they're not afraid to kind of almost treat some of what we see with the comic as being kind of a greatest hits to some degree of pulling it into the GI Joe that we know, which is Baroness is in a black costume with a cobra symbol on the front, and so I'm quite willing to be entirely surprised when it happens next issue or whatever, that Cobra that she becomes a baddie. And I'm happy. I'll probably be happy either way. I kind of, I do kind of want it to be, extended out a little bit longer, because I do like that, different dynamic. But I can definitely see it happening, and I think that sort of echoed a little bit with what they're talking about in Risk in the back of the book, where there's the comments in the letters pages, could Risk potentially be Snake Eyes, which is a theory that we've talked about. And there's a they sort of
they say no.
They say no, and they say no quite definitively in a way that I believe is true, and it's not going to be contradicted down the line. But I think there's a lot of fair fuel as to why that theory could be there, in terms of the flashbacks that they showed of Risk fighting against ninjas, the fact that he is so has these almost superpowered fighting skills, is a bit of a motor mouth, and that might make for an interesting tension with him then becoming a silent character. He wears black, blah blah blah, but Risk is not going to be Snake Eyes. So it's kind of reinforcing that point that this G.I. Joe, while they're prepared to do interesting and different things, they're going to come back to the core of what G.I. Joe is all about.
One of my, it's not a worry, I'm aware of it, is once Snake Eyes does show up, once Scarlet does come in from her, long-term mission in Japan, once the Baroness does defect, I think I worry a little bit that there won't be enough to differentiate it from the other G.I. Joe comic that's running.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't actually believe that would be a problem. I think Joshua Williamson and the editor, Ben Abernethy, and the talents, and they're looking at different toys, and they have this different continuity, and a giant alien robot can show up and change into a thing. So that wouldn't really happen. But as long as this is, to go back to a Marvel Comics analogy, as long as this is kind of an ultimate universe take on G.I. Joe, or I like that term you just used, sort of a greatest hits version of G.I. Joe, it's so different that I am sort of guaranteed a very different feeling and reading experience. And the market, the comic book reading marketplace, and the sort of publishing pipeline, it's exciting to have a lot of different G.I. Joe comics, but you can quickly have too many, or you can quickly have them be too different or too similar. And we have had different sort of versions of that in the past 40 years, when G.I. Joe and Special Missions were running at Marvel, both written by Larry Hama. That was great, two peas in a pod, even though they were different kinds of peas. At IDW early on, there were 3 books, and they were each really different, and that was great. But then the movie's only okay, and turns out the market can't bear 3 G.I. Joe comics that are that different from each other, right? So every year or two, IDW sort of changes the formula and tries a different. So anyway, I think in very broad strokes, I'm just hoping that the Energon Universe G.I. Joe keeps being awesome, because it's really exciting to have not just one awesome G.I. Joe monthly, but goodness, 2.
Very good. I'll call out another super chat from Infinite Entertainment. First super chat ever. In that case, have another. I'll ask a question too. Over in Void Rivals, a major character just died in an unexpected way. How do you feel about the theory that we are seeing the EU origin of Serpentor? Maybe we'll mull on that and come back to it at the end of the episode. It wasn't something that I had thought about up to this point. I think I've got a segue to what you were talking about before in terms of sames and differences. So not that one. I want to share this one here. So last time we saw Ripper was in the pages of Cobra Commander issue 5, and this sort of glorious scene where Ripper had been sort of captured, and he was offered the chance of mercy, and he said, "No way! The moment I turn, you're just going to shoot me in the back. I'd rather stay." And so he has stayed with Cobra Commander. And when we first saw Ripper, he was in that recognizable Ripper costume, very much using the classified design, featured on the front cover to issue 2 as a second print from Jason Howard, very much in that design. But what we see this issue is that redesign from Tom Reilly, which sort of echoes the look of Mercer and the Vipers in this sort of grey blue with sort of red ribbing as a look to him. So here, it's kind of reinforcing for me that the look of the characters here was, I guess, the sort of the jumping on point was classified, but that's very much just the starting point. And Tom Reilly is definitely having a lot of fun reinventing the designs so that I guess they can live in that same universe, but not being slavishly beholden to the look of the classified design. Very much sort of being able to do his own thing. So having Ripper sort of zigzag, in a different direction with his look into this sort of more Cobra soldier kind of aesthetic was quite an interesting one for me, and sort of a little glimmer of hope that this universe can do its own thing. It doesn't have to just repeat what has come before.
Yeah, this is a good comparison because I feel like sooner or later Ripper will get his other costume back, or a version of it, and then rejoin the Dreadnoks. But it's possible that Williamson is juggling so many balls in the air that he hasn't decided. And it's possible that he sort of never gets around to it because there's so many characters and even a lot of other Dreadnoks. And it's possible that him being a traditional Dreadnok in a traditional Dreadnok costume that we recognize for him in the Cobra Commander miniseries is all we ever get. And in that case, I'm reminded, since I'm making film comparisons, I'm reminded of Christopher Nolan's Batman movie trilogy, where the first one, Batman Begins, I like that movie. It's not really a Batman movie because he's not Batman until, later in the movie. And the third one, this is Nolan's term, actually, from the art and making of. The third one's kind of a war film because there's this, like city under siege with Bane as the villain. And it's so international with, Batman having an adventure outside of Gotham. And so it's really that second movie, The Dark Knight, which is the most traditional of Batman stories. But even only a small part of that is sort of a normal Batman adventure where he's in Gotham City taking out criminals, because that movie gets so big and it's similarly like the Tim Burton Batman movies. You sort of only have like a normal, like night in, night out sense that Batman is going on patrol and taking out regular criminals and not occasionally dealing with like marquee supervillains at the very beginning of the first Tim Burton movie and kind of between them. And so I'm looking at this G.I. Joe story and I keep wondering, not out of impatience, but out of sort of excited and panicked curiosity, well, when's it going to be a regular G.I. Joe story? And I think the answer we're coming up with is maybe never, which is exciting and stressful. Because one of the things that I wanted out of those Batman movies from 89 and 92 and those 3 Nolan Batman movies, I wanted like a little bit more sort of regular Batman. But it's like, no, we keep having to get to like the big stakes thing where like an international supervillain terrorist gets all the cops underground. It's like, okay, well, this feels like no man's land like a big year-long comic book event. Like, okay, can I get a Batman movie that feels more like a regular 2-issue story where he's like finding some person who kidnapped the mayor's kid, right? Anyway, you have a page with Ripper on screen. We should probably talk less about Batman. So back to you.
No, so I did enjoy the sequence with Ripper and the moments that we have with Ripper in this issue. He's sort of used to great comic effect and just a nice variety of characters that each one of these characters is kind of serving a different purpose and acting in a different way. That it definitely isn't that cookie cutter element of any character potentially being interchangeable and having the same dialogue. It's just draw a different costume on them. They are definitely their own entities. And I think what we're seeing on the page with Ripper is one of those standard Cobra energon blasters, but with a Ripper claw. What would you call it? A Ripper bayonet. Added on the end of it. So adding it up and also using his jaws of life or jaws of death to great effect in this sequence as well.
There's a tiny thing that's happening on the first panel. Can you zoom in to this first panel? Do you have a close-up of that? It's okay if you don't, because we can see it from here.
I can.
This first word balloon, this is page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of G.I. Joe issue 4. When Ripper says, "Sorry, mates," letterer Russ Wooton has very slightly rotated those two words counterclockwise. Both the word balloon and the actual sort of horizontal guideline that they sit on, those two words are not horizontal, straight left and right. They're slightly tilted down to the left. And I'm not talking about like italics or non-italics. And this is something that computer letterers almost never do. And I feel like letterers who used to or still letter by hand, particularly like right on the artboards, might do subtly sometimes without realizing it, or might do it on purpose, where just for effect, you can rotate, you can slightly shift the lettering a little bit counterclockwise or a little bit clockwise in the same way that you italicize something for added effect. This does not read to me like a mistake. I don't think this is like a Photoshop error. It's just a little thing that emphasizes, in addition to the bolding on these two words and the bold stroke of the actual word balloon, right, before it sort of goes back to normal with "you ain't going nowhere," Russ Wooton has done this very small thing to emphasize this, and I love it.
Very good. I had this. I'm at the back of the book now again, Tim, but I just wanted to follow up on this because it does play into what we were talking about before about the Baroness and potentially her coming back to the Joes. What we are trailing is this brainwave bomb that will brainwash everyone into serving Cobra, and that potentially being tested on the Joes, which includes at this point Baroness. So we could have in our line of vision the route that would take us to the Baroness potentially being brainwashed into serving Cobra.
I had thought that what Williamson, I like that theory. I'd be a little sad if it was that sort of artificial. I mean, it's still story driven, but it's a device. It is literally a device that would do it rather than her changing her way of thinking philosophically. And I feel like Williamson, sort of every other time we see the Baroness, she's rolling her eyes at something that Duke or one of the Joes says or does. Duke and Risk have this fight. Duke is crazy. Duke is headstrong. Duke gives up too early. And she even say something to when they get thrown in, when Stalker, what page is that? When Stalker gets thrown into the back of the okay, I guess she's observing it, but a line that I loved, Risk says, "Damn, they got you too, huh?" And Stalker says, "They outnumbered us." But Baroness keeps seeing, I mean, as you said at the very beginning, right? Excuse me, that my pencil just fell on the ground. The Joes keep losing. And I've been wondering if Williamson is building up Baroness as becoming disillusioned with this redemption that she was sort of promised at the end of the Duke miniseries. And, like the first 3 pages of G.I. Joe #1, it's like all these jetpacks, these like silly boys. And then I was wondering, okay, so that's internal. What I have isn't working. So what would Williamson do that's external? What would Cobra offer? What would Cobra Commander say to her? What would Destro say to her? What would Destro offer? Is there a scene upcoming where she'll get to interact with Destro and there's like a romantic, chemical attraction? Is it blackmail? Does she just sort of say, as a mercenary before, or whatever she was before, special ops, like America can't cut it. I'm going with this other group. But I sort of in a fun way, I keep seeing this conspicuous blue star on her chest with this chest armor, torso armor that I like the design and it looks good on her. But every time I see it, my brain says, that's not what the Baroness wears. And my brain won't sort of stop reacting until she's in her normal costume, or a classified, tweaked Tom Reilly version of it. And then I will say to you, like, oh, I miss all the issues where Williamson had me guessing, and Baroness was trying to be a good guy, or really was a good guy, and she hadn't been disillusioned. I'm going to change that chest armor could is sort of modular as well, so it could very easily be swapped out for a black chest armor featuring a red snake on the front of it. Yeah, maybe in the sort of ultimate universe take on this specific bit of costuming, they're in a battle, her chest plate gets charred, she says, I'm giving up, the star gets like cracked, the blue light stops glowing, she like spray paints a cobra on it, or like pulls a red cobra symbol off of a bat's shirt and sticks it on, and she's like, I'm with you, Destro. And she doesn't get the sort of normal costume. She gets the like Act 3 battle damaged, sell it for an action figure movie version of her costume. I wanted to change topics and ask a question.
Before we do that, I think let's linger on just on the fact as well that Destro and Baroness are yet to be on panel together. So I think that is one thing that we can expect to see next issue, in issue 5. And we've also got this dynamic as well.
This is where I wanted to go. So on page 14, panel 4, at the Mars building in DC, all the Cobra brass in the Ripper, they're all together, and Chameleon says, Destro says, this is my best Sean Connery Mark talking Joe impression. What is the meaning of this? Why are we here? And Chameleon says, calm down, lover. Ripper and I followed your lead and retrieved the brainwave scanner, and then we received an order to return here. So she says, calm down, lover, and she puts her hand on his chest. So 2 things. One, I'm reminded of every time Jean Grey or Scott Summers calls the other lover in an X-Men comic written by Chris Claremont, or one of the writers who came after him in the 80s and 90s, because that to me always seems like a word that characters say in movies and TV and comic books, but no one in the real world calls someone else lover. I don't know. Maybe they do. Let us know in the comments. This could be the next Facebook poll. Talking Joe fans, someone that you're interested in romantically, do you call them lover? Okay, 2, Mark, is this brand new, this panel? I can't remember, was there flirting in the Destro miniseries? Did they have a romantic interaction at the end of the Destro miniseries?
Yeah, that's sort of the final moment of the Destro miniseries. He shoots off his missile into the satellite, Squid you angel, into the satellite, impressing her with his vast armory. Do you remember that bit?
I remember they had some banter when he in issue 3. drawn by Andrea Milano, when he comes out of his family vault and she has her sniper rifle and they have some banter, sort of like, oh, you're more impressive than I thought, or oh, you're more dangerous than I thought. But I do not actually remember a moment of flirting. Are you describing on the final pages of Destro issue 5?
Yeah.
Flirting?
It's
Listeners, Mark is grabbing issue 5 out right now.
there.
Just read it to us. Read it to us.
It's it's a panel after he has shot his missiles to take down the Overkill satellite. There is a half-page splash of Destro and Chameleon having a smooch.
Oh right, they kiss. All right, yeah. I'm gonna chalk up me not remembering that exciting ending to issue 5 of Destro, because that was an issue I read in bed before going to sleep, not the next morning just before we recorded. But that's a good refresher. Okay, and then different comments on page 3. Which one is Tomax and which one's Zaymot?
Okay.
Are they?
Let's see.
Is this an Ultimate Universe thing? Where like it's like Galactus isn't a giant spaceman who's 90,000 feet tall. He's a swarm. Or Nick Fury isn't a white guy from World War II. He's a black guy from like 20 years ago. Are they just switching Tomax and Zaymot, or am I getting confused? Because I'm sorry, maybe it's not page.
Well, it's on the next page.
4,
He says
that's it. Excellent shot, Tomax. And okay, so the person who says excellent shot, Tomax, page 4, panel 3, I can't tell if that's a person who's driving a car and we're not quite seeing the door and the window behind them, or that's a person hanging on the back of a car, a Jeep. And maybe we can tell based on the side that the ribbing, is the ribbing on both sides of both of their costumes? But I feel like the person who drives the Stinger drives the Stinger, and the person who's on the back is who aims and fires the missiles. So is Tomax, is he on the back and he's saying, is this?
Oh.
So is that Tomax is that Zaymot on the back? Because Zaymot has the scar.
On the previous page, there's a little bit there where the person
on the back,
presumably on the back, is clicking and shooting the missiles.
Okay.
And the person that was shown to be on the back,
go to the previous page,
was
right on the bottom. Yeah, pedal the metal, brother.
Yeah, there.
That's Zaymot. Zaymot has a scar.
Mm-hmm.
And Zaymot, those things above his head, those are parts of the missiles.
Yeah.
So is this just a lettering mistake?
I think they might be getting mistaken. Yeah. I think Zaymot is on the back with the scar, and he is the one who shot the metal. He is the one who shot the missiles. So it should be excellent shot, Zaymot. I think. Yeah. I think you're right. Okay. I think we're all on the same page here.
All right. So there's my error detected, and I will add this to my email to the letters page of more than one Skybound G.I. Joe comic, where I ask them to proofread one more time because there are some typos, and typos really bum me out. If it's from a high school student turning in an English paper, that's a small disappointment. If it is from a big publishing company that has the G.I. Joe license, that is embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, Tomax Zaymot, it's almost par for the course. It's like 50-50 chance at this point, which then maybe they're just like, roll the dice. Let's use that to decide who's gonna one of those two-sided dice. Right. So we're in in the middle of that scene. It's an exciting scene, and we've got on screen at the moment. We've got the top panel is that sequence where the Stinger missiles have got this special power attached to them that can just blow up motorcycles and leave organic material unscathed, which is great.
And the organic material, when it lands and bounces, it's basically okay.
It's basically okay.
I mean, that first panel above the boom, Dr. Monev looks like he's 13 feet in the air. And I'm sort of waiting for the next panel, him to be complaining like, "Oh, I broke my arm, you crazy people. What kind of rescue is this?" Now, as you mentioned, sort of Stalker and CoverGirl healing in sort of fictional superhero time, like 24 time, comic book time. They were really injured in the previous issue. This is really actually only an hour or a day or two later. But, we don't want them off the board and out of the comic for 3 issues so that they can have their 2 weeks or 2 months of recuperation and physical therapy. Now that you've broken your arm, you have to do target practice again because your hand-eye coordination's out of practice. Similarly, this is an exciting action comic, and things get exaggerated. So big people are drawn even bigger, and fast things like motorcycles and missiles and punches are drawn even faster. And if a missile blows up some motorcycles, people don't get thrown 6 inches or a foot into the air off of their motorcycles. They get thrown 10, 15 feet into the air. So I'll allow it. But it does feel conspicuous that in all the previous issues, Joes get hurt. And here, Joes don't.
Mm-hmm. And this sequence we have the Joes again. Talking to the writing and so on. Each one of the Joes has definitely given a lot of personality. Duke is sort of slightly reckless and driven by self-belief. Baroness is slightly snarky and grumbling ever so slightly about what the rest of the Joes are doing, or there is a grumble almost every panel she's appearing on, and Risk is giving the odds. So he says the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1. And then Duke says, "Never tell me the odds, kid." That great bit of dialogue there.
Let me talk about Helix?
Helix? Yeah.
Let me just talk about Risk for a second. If he's doing that kind of math, is this something that we saw in Helix? In either other G.I. Joe comics at IDW or in her file card? Isn't her specialty? It's like
battlefield situational awareness or something like that, where she's got the ability to predict outcomes. Yeah,
which is sort of, it's like Midnighter's power from DC and Wildstorm comics, where he's imagined every possibility during a fight, so he can sort of dodge your punch because he knows that there's 7 things you might do right now, and you're most likely to throw a punch with your right hand, and so he dodges it, and then he kind of punches you in the nuts. So I don't have any Helix action figures, am I remembering this correctly? Is she a little bit computer brain? She's not a cyborg, but isn't this
not a cyborg? But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is not a criticism. This is just an observation that, in introducing this new character, you introduce a new character, they're going to do something that a previous Joe does. Like, this is the guy who does stuff with bombs. This is the guy who does stuff with fire. Well, does he make fire or put out fire? We've got both of those. So if you have a guy who has Midnighter's superpower from the Authority, it's going to remind me of Helix. And I'm totally fine with them not having Helix in this new continuity. I'm okay if she doesn't show up till issue 100. I'm just noting that this does remind me of someone who we know from a different G.I. Joe universe.
Yeah, and I think it's playing into he's got a background in risk assessment, so that's what I think where his name comes from. So he's his shtick is a little bit playing the odds, figuring out
Helix
risk.
assessment.
Yeah, blah blah.
So a couple Joes get hit in the head with the stocks of machine gun lasers. Okay, so I said Joes don't get injured here. They do get knocked unconscious by getting hit in the head, and a couple U.S. military guards at a secret bunker in Shenandoah National Park get shot in the head and neck and through the torso with chameleons. So the sound effect is bang. So it's not one of the lasers, right? It's a regular machine gun.
Yeah, it looks like I think it's a Barrett. Is it Barrett 50 caliber? And anyway, a high caliber sniper rifle. So it sort of delivers a lot of impact. Yeah, but I think that is basically a real world weapon.
Okay, so not either she doesn't want the laser rifles, or not everyone gets them. So far, we should talk for a moment about the redesign of the brainwave scanner. So this one, we've heard about it for an issue or two, and now we see it getting loaded off of a truck on that page where we see the Mars building in Washington, D.C. And it reminds me of, it's like 1 part brainwave scanner from Marvel continuity and 2 parts Professor Charles Xavier, Jim Lee, X-Men floating wheelchair. And Mark's chuckling, and I was hoping to get a chuckle, but I'm not saying that to make fun. I'm just saying, what in popular culture does this remind me of? Cerebro, right? It reminds me of Cerebro a little bit from, speaking of X-Men stories. So rather than saying what it sort of reminds me of and hoping you'll chuckle, Mark, you want to talk about Tom Reilly's modification of the brainwave scanner?
Yeah, I was just looking at what one of the things that it reminded me of. Let me add it onto the screen here. Where are we? Here we go. This is a destroyer droid from Star Wars Phantom Menace. Oh no, hold on. There we go. Destroyer droid from Star Wars Phantom Menace with the kind of looped arc coming up. Yeah,
that's sort of the sphere that rolls in and then unfolds like a and then starts firing. I mean, this really is the brainwave scanner. I was, in terms of Williamson making up new things, taking things that we know and doing new takes on them, or grabbing things that are very specifically Larry Hama things from a different and long-established G.I. Joe comics continuity. I was surprised when the brainwave scanner got mentioned at all in an earlier issue. I was surprised when Dr. Venom gets mentioned at all. And now we're really seeing it. And so, one way of saying it is that Williamson is the beneficiary of a lot of G.I. Joe mythology and continuity over 40 plus years, because he can take whatever worked best, mix it and match it, remix it, and I think now I'm sort of looping back to that comment I made at the beginning, which is this threat that Cobra Commander is making about what he might do with this technology feels very much like the animated show.
So they've sort of put their own little twist on the design of the brainwave scanner, but it's very obviously sort of in that same sphere of what we would think of when we're thinking of the brainwave scanner. But then they come up with this new idea of a brainwave bomb, and I don't know if it put you immediately in mind, Tim, or not, but of the mutant zombie bomb from a Cobra Casino ARA prior to issue 300.
Oh, in the 290s. No, the thing that I thought of Mind Bomb, and I thought, what Marvel story is called Mind Bomb? Or, well, Mad Bomb is I think it's an Amazing Spider-Man story. Oh, Mind Bomb was that Warren Ellis Carnage one-shot back in the 90s. I think it was the first solo Carnage comic. So it's just two words that sound good together. Brain Bomb, Mind Bomb, Mad Bomb, Bomb Bomb, Chocolate Bomb, Sex Bomb. Just notice in this scene, since I haven't talked about Jordie Bellaire's awesome colors in this comic much yet, this scene when we go to Mars in DC and all the Cobras are there and we see the brainwave scanner, what an interesting palette where these the first 2 pages, right, where we see the building and then the brainwave scanner gets unloaded. The foregrounds have a lot of warm in them, and the backgrounds have a lot of it's a warm beige. But also look in that second panel where the brainwave scanner is getting unloaded from the truck. Look at what Bellaire does, right? With a sort of a loose painterly brush, she just like splotches some of this dull grayed out red all around and behind the brainwave scanner. That's not a light source. That's not actual paint all over the floor and the like loading bay ramp of the truck, right? She doesn't really get any on the brainwave scanner. It's just this moment of impressionism, right? But it slightly picks up from the clouds in the panel above, and it's slightly picked up in all the sort of dull reds in the character costumes to the right and then below. But it's just a way of focusing your eye, right? Because sort of the points of highest contrast on that panel where the brainwave scanner is getting unloaded are around Chameleon and Ripper, because they've got some darks, and then there's that bright lighter color behind them, that cream. But she wants your eye to note the brainwave scanner, so she splashes this red around it.
And in the color, the very bold red often sort of represents sort of violence or danger, and so I guess you could intuit that this sort of slightly murkier red is more like a brooding menace, sort of, a throbbing kind of pulsing. This is going to cause some danger. Watch out, kind of thing.
So there's this dull grayed out blue on these 2 pages in a lot of the character costumes, but then you turn the page to that wide spread where Cobra Commander's standing on the HISS tank, and there's now a lot more green on these 2 pages, although it's a like yellowed, grayed, dull green. And then you turn the page again, and this is where the Joes start to get introduced, and we're now seeing more of Cobra Commander, and Bellaire brings in more purple, right? And it's like a brown, gray, dull purple, but particularly this page with the Joes. And then like pinks get introduced as this background element. And then you turn the page to the end of the comic, and what's that thing that Mark just said about red, right? Violence or danger. And this actually now is sort of the light source and not just an impressionistic emotional coloring job on this page, right? Because the highlights on the tops and backs of these 5 captives feels like there's a pink red light up to the left off panel, even if their shadows may not precisely describe that light source. I'm slightly changing the time. Jordie Bellaire is a very thoughtful color artist, and I love what she does with just like 5 or 6 colors per page. On this final page, I am not saying this to trash talk Tom Reilly. I think I see on this final page a smart time save and efficiency, right? A very good artist designer choosing to draw something that could be hard and time consuming in a way that becomes a little easier and more efficient, because assuming Reilly draws the book in order, page 1 first and page 20 last, page 20 is probably going to be the page that's like rushed because he's out of time, right? And so can you imagine getting this like 2-sentence plot summary for a final page of a comic, right? When you get the plot or the script, like 5 Joes. I don't have the script in front of me, so I'm just retroactively writing it from looking at the art. 5 Joes in chains, a red spotlight above them, surrounded by the entire Cobra army, all with machine guns or machine gun lasers aiming at them from various tiers of the Mars warehouse, right? So Reilly gets to decide, well, am I drawing 5 or 10 or 20 or 30? How big is this crowd? So what does he do? 2/3 of the page, almost 2/3 of the page, let's say half the page, silhouette, right? He's got to draw out those figures so the proportions are right. And so the little bits where you see some of their wrists or the glowing blue bits on their rifles are accurately placed. But he's not drawing faces, right? He's not drawing a lot of costume details. And he puts the Joes far away, and the script might have called for that. The script might have had the, quote, camera angle in it, right? But this is both a really dramatic, fun, surprising, upsetting page turn end of the comic, right? Like, good job, writer and artist and colorist. And also, I think on the part of Reilly, some professional efficiency. I got to make this a little easier on myself, because let's say you pull the camera back like 5 feet. Now you have to draw twice as many people. Let's say you don't put all the Cobras in silhouette, right? But I didn't turn this page and think, I feel ripped off. Reilly phoned in this final page. He should have drawn more. That's not how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of working, I guess, from a efficiency point of drawing the thing, but also really well dramatically. That, and our eye is really, focused on the middle and the most important part of the page with the Joes. They're looking, they're small and they're looking, disempowered. They're looking, like they're losing here. And that sort of is a nice contrast to Duke's speech bubble. We got Cobra right where we want them. And at the same time, the artist and the colorist working really well together. That you've got these little blue highlights showing the guns, which are sort of established as, pretty clearly illustrated, weaponry for the troopers in the front row. But then, as you zoom back to the back of the back of the troopers, those same guns, entirely in silhouette in black, you just know that they're there because you've got 3 blue dots now at this point, signaling that they're there.
Again, I'm not trying to say that Reilly, took an easy way out. When I saw this page, it reminded me a little bit of that page from Marvel issue 21, Silent Interlude, with breakdowns by Larry Hama. The page where Destro's leading some Cobra soldiers up the stairs, and Hama, whenever he talks about, when he does a page by page breakdown of this comic, he gets this page and he says, Destro's leading a bunch of troops, but I only had to draw 1 or 2, and the rest, it's just the tops of their helmets because they're behind someone, or that's how the panel's cropped. And I thought, right, you don't always have to draw the hardest version with full detail and full lighting. And if anything, that half the Cobras here are in shadow. It's just one more contrast. The Joes are small, the Cobras are big. The Joes are chained up, the Cobras aren't. The Joes don't have weapons, the Cobras do. The Joes are lit. Well, half the Cobras close to us aren't, which makes it maybe scarier. Because it's just a legion of shadows with weapons pointing the weapons. Good last page. I was excited. And I guess one more time while I'm doing the analogy to Marvel's Ultimate Comics of the early 2000s. Sometimes you turn the page to a final page of Ultimate X-Men or not Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man, there'd be many, many panels of Peter talking with Aunt May, and it was great. But those other 2 books, you'd often turn the page, and the final page would be a full page splash with one really punctuated word balloon that gets you. And this feels like that. The Ultimate Comics did not invent that, but they maybe repopularized it. And certainly others have done it since. So I don't want to say that Williamson is doing what Marvel did in 2000. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, one thing we've not yet talked about is kind of the Destro Cobra Commander dynamic, and specifically they have this sort of element where Mercer has found the dead body of this spy that Cobra Commander had chucked into the pit of killer robot snakes last issue, and when he did so, you could tell underneath his skin that he had some blue skin underneath the sort of the flesh suits that he was wearing. So I think Cobra Commander had thought they had been able to hide that element, but Mercer and Destro have uncovered it. A bit gruesome, but making you think of the likes of V, wasn't it, that had like the lizards with the human skin.
Also, fun Halloween, pulpy, gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the guards getting shot in the head elsewhere in this comic, that's like PG-13 upsetting, and this is like fun PG-13, spook the kids. Your mileage may vary, but go on. Destro and Mercer are doing this. It's not an autopsy, but they're talking.
They found out about this. They know that Cobra Commander is up to something. They say something's fishy here. The Commander is not telling us the whole story. Doesn't matter. He can have his secrets for now, as long as he gives us the energon. And all the while, Clutch is eavesdropping. He's getting a lot of good intel there about energon. That must be some kind of power source. So freaky, blue-skinned guys in flesh suits, daggers that aren't made out of metal. Because I guess Cobra La is against metal, and their technology is, largely organic. So
it's going to be like chitin, like the carapace of an insect, or like
sort of how
Nemesis and Force
Nemesis sort of grows these bones on his spiky bones on his elbows.
It's going to be like clamshells and fingernails. In the next issue, and the next issue after that, do you think that Clutch is going to find the 5 captured Joes and help them escape? In a general sense, I feel like the intel that he has gathered will come to the Joes who have gathered some of their own intel. Because one of the things that I find fun about this kind of story, which writer Williamson is keeping track of, and me, reader Tim, forgets to, is who knows what and who knows that someone else knows what. Like you reminded me that Destro and Baroness haven't met, and Clutch reminded me that
haven't met on panel.
Right.
Never know what's in their backstory. Yep.
Right. Okay. Yes. Clutch reminds me that either all the Joes, or at least he, doesn't know what energon is. And so then I have to think, did the other Joes? Oh, probably not. There's a whole scene for Destro and Mercer now knowing more of what Cobra Commander knows. And so I do feel like this will pay off much sooner than later, that Clutch will get another communication to the Joes, or he'll break them out, or he'll shoot their handcuffs off in the next issue, and then a bunch of Cobras will jump on him and throw him in jail, and the other Joes will get out, and he won't. And Duke will go, Clutch! And the Clutch will say, Duke, get...
But yeah, it's a good point. Like all of the Cobras have been brought back to the Mars base, the Mars office, Mars, whatever you'd call it.
Headquarters.
Headquarters. Thank you. That's a good word. And so, yeah, pretty much all of Cobra is there. These 5 Joes are there, plus Clutch is there because he jumped on board the helicopter. He said something like, this will be a good way to get out of here. Yeah, this might be my best shot at getting out of here, sort of jumping on board a transport helicopter as all of the forces were moving. So from Springfield, this would be back to Washington. So Clutch would be in disguise as a Viper at that same location with the Joes captured. So him being there, he'll definitely, yeah, you'd expect him to intervene in some fashion, wouldn't you? So I think we might be able to expect something along those lines come issue 5.
Anything? Do we know anyone in the letters page?
I can't remember if I recognized any names. Was there any names? There was a Daniel from Dallas, a Jeremy, a Steve White, a Joe Motley, John Burkhart, and a Nate. But in the pages of the letters, someone came up with a suggestion or a number of suggestions for the letter page title, and they asked for people to submit their own suggestions. So given the quite long delay between issues, I don't think we'll necessarily see an update for that one for a little while yet, because this is reaction to issue 1 in the pages of issue 4. So yeah, I guess that won't be until until issue 7 or so that we'll see those. But I came up with 4 on my short list that I might pop in as an email. A nice little letter column, pit stop, file postcards, and redacted comments.
Huh. Those are all good. And then
anyone watching live or later,
don't steal them. No, don't steal them. Steal Mark's ideas. If Mark sends in a letter and they print it, let him get the whatever freebie, the signed comic or the photo in the comic or the original artwork. Speaking of photos and comics, the second to last and third to last page is another 2-page splash of tiny photos of about 200 Joe fans who submitted photos of themselves back before issue 1 was published. I'm with hashtag Team Joe, and as with previously, it's mostly men. There are a couple dogs. There's 1 or 2 cats or person with a cat. One dog is winking, and and I don't recognize anyone. So I took a quick look at all the faces, and none of them jump out as people that I know or know of. So if you get your photo in the back of G.I. Joe 4, and we aren't calling it out now in this sentence, let us know. And congratulations.
Yeah, it's quite fun that they're still running with it. I've not seen my photo in there yet, so fingers crossed.
It is quite fun. They're still running with it. I'm a grump, and as exciting as it is.
I did see someone. I think.
Wait.
Computer enhance.
Wait,
enhance.
Chris Murray, I see you.
There we go.
Right? It's Chris Murray.
Yeah. That's Chris Murray, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
That's Joe Declassified's Chris Murray.
Wow, Chris. Oh, that's great. Look at that. I've been emailing Chris Murray all week because he's looking at chapters 6 and 7 of my book for me right now. Congrats, Chris Murray. I'm a grump, so as fun as it is for one person I know and 199 I don't to get their photos in G.I. Joe, I would trade that for 2 more pages of letters. And I wonder how long they're going to run this. I wonder if they're going to do it till they run out of photos, or if they'd sort of committed to do it for X number of issues. And I am out of things to say about this comic book, Mark.
I think I've run out too. Should we return to that question mark there? Void Rivals, a major character just died in an unexpected way. It was relatively recent, so we won't say who, but was unexpected. How do you feel about the theory that we are seeing the EU origin of Serpentor? I don't quite see the connective threads as to why the death of the character that was in Void Rivals would be to Serpentor. It's not like it's an historical character. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but I'm not seeing Serpentor here personally myself.
This is a fun theory. In my mind, a G.I. Joe timeline in a rebooted universe should somewhat follow the original. So if Joshua Williamson wants to put Flint in a yellow costume and have him fight environmental disasters, I don't want that to happen early. I want that to happen later. And, that could be fun. Williamson could do something fun with it. Similarly, in my mind, Serpentor is not a thing that happens in a G.I. Joe story in its first year, when Destro and Cobra Commander are still getting to know each other. And so if Williamson is planting seeds so he can get to it later, that's cool. If he's zagging and is going to have a Serpentor character show up much earlier than I think it, quote, should happen, that'll be fun and I trust it. But there's so much Williamson can do with just the Cobra Commander dynamic when he's not fighting a sort of potentially more powerful usurper. But the fact that this G.I. Joe starts from the beginning with Cobra Law does turn everything I just said about a timeline template on its head. And whenever it happens, I'm sure it'll be good or great and will look good or great, which is all I can hope for.
Although sort of there's that kind of retroactive element of the cartoon of Cobra Commander's origins being with Cobra La, so it's at least remaining true to that component of G.I. Joe the movie. Right, I think
I did it with this a psychic motivator.
Let's see. Next time on Talking Joe Energon Universe, it is G.I. Joe versus Cobra. G.I. Joe has suffered massive losses at the hands of Cobra, and now their backs are against the wall. Is this their last stand? How far will the Joes go to finally stop Cobra's plan? G.I. Joe issue 5 lands Wednesday, March the 19th, 2025. Ooh, exciting. And in the meantime as well, we will also be looking at the issues of A Real American Hero as they come out. We have got lots of exciting things in the pipeline. We have got an interview in the can, which will be released relatively soon. Last week, we released an episode that had only had Mike Vosberg. So that was very exciting. So if you've not yet checked out that episode of us talking to G.I. Joe legend Mike Vosberg, that is only one episode.
If you don't know who Mike Vosberg is, that's proof you need to listen to this episode. And if you do know who Mike Vosberg is, you should probably listen to this episode.
Okay. Infinite Entertainment has clarified there was a weird zoom in on the Cobra corpse that is causing speculation.
Trying to think back to that issue of Void Rivals.
Or the
Or the corpse in this issue of G.I.
Or the corpse
Joe.
in this issue.
Huh.
Yeah, I can't see it myself. You never know, but yeah, I'm not seeing it. Right. So I think that is us done with with issue 4. Tim, where can people find you when you're not talking to me about all things G.I. Joe?
Watch video essays on TV and film history at my YouTube channel at Atomic Abe. That's like Abraham Lincoln, Atomic Abe. I own a comic book store right outside of Boston, Hub Comics. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, realamericanbook.com.
Very good. And if you are new to Talking Joe, you can find us over at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the website that points to all of the places we can be found. We're on Twitter still. We're on Facebook, quite a lively group with all of the latest news being shared as it happens over there. We're also available, obviously, as audio-only podcasts, as well as the YouTube channel. If you are not yet subscribed to YouTube, do head on over to YouTube, or if you are there already, just click that subscribe button. Why not? Add a comment, add a like. All good. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe, where the likes of Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, and latest member D are all getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. If you want to find out what we think of Sigma 6, the Patreon members already know. So I think that is us done. So, Tim, it only remains for you to remind us that
Nobody needs Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.